In the endless dark of space, a massive station floated above a dying red star. It was the home of the Galactic Council, the oldest alliance in the known universe. For centuries, this was where wars were discussed, alliances made, and empires judged. But today, the hall was filled with chaos. Alien voices echoed through the grand chamber. Thousands of delegates shouted, argued, and blamed each other. The reason was simple. The Terran-Vulcar War had reached its breaking point. It had lasted more than 600 years. Entire planets had been destroyed. Billions had died. And still, no one could stop it. The Council, made of the most powerful races, had tried everything. Peace treaties, weapon bans, even divine pleas to their gods, but nothing worked. War had become a way of life. Then, suddenly, an alarm broke through the noise. The room went silent. A cold robotic voice echoed from the ceiling, priority message received from the Sol System. The delegates froze. Sol System. That meant Earth. The humans. The council members looked at each other in disbelief. Humans were not supposed to send messages to the council. They were considered too young, too reckless, too primitive. Just a few centuries ago, they had barely reached the stars. And now, they dared to interrupt the council's most important meeting? Archon Veldrak, the six-eyed leader of the council, stood from his throne. His deep voice rumbled like thunder. "Put it on screen," he ordered. The lights dimmed, and a giant hologram appeared above the chamber. It showed a simple human, short hair, sharp eyes, and a calm face. The humans called him Ambassador Lee. Behind him was the blue and white symbol of Earth. The entire council leaned forward. Then the human spoke. His voice was steady, quiet, but carried weight. "Members of the Galactic Council," he said, "I bring news that will change everything. The Terran-Vulcar War is over. Humanity has ended it." For a moment, no one moved. The words hung in the air, impossible and absurd. Then the chamber exploded in noise. "Lies!" shouted a reptilian delegate. "Impossible!" cried another. Veldrak raised his hand, and silence returned. His eyes glowed a deep gold. "Explain yourself, human. The greatest powers of this galaxy have failed to stop that war. How could your kind end it?" The hologram of Ambassador Lee smiled faintly. "Because you fought for power," he said. "We fought for peace." And then the message ended. The hologram vanished. The silence that followed was heavier than any battle. No one spoke. No one moved. They had waited centuries for an end to the war, and now some primitive species from the edge of the galaxy claimed they did it in hours. Veldrak's voice broke the silence. "Find that human," he said coldly. "Bring him here." Within moments, the order spread through the station. Ships moved, scanners searched, and diplomatic channels opened. Hours later, an incoming transmission arrived. Earth's envoy ship had entered Council space. The news spread like fire. Every corridor of the station buzzed with whispers. Who were these humans? What did they do? What kind of weapon could end a 600-year war in a few hours? The answers were coming, but no one felt ready to hear them. In the observation deck, a group of alien guards watched the human ship approach. It was small, metallic, simple, nothing like the grand battleships of other races. Yet, something about it felt wrong. It moved too quietly, too smoothly. Its engines left no heat, no radiation, no sign of life except one faint signal inside. As the ship came closer, the air around it shimmered, like light bending in water. One guard whispered, "Is it cloaked?" Another replied, "No, it's something else." The docking lights turned green. The ship connected to the station's airlock with a soft click. No movement. No signal. Just silence. Veldrak himself stood at the airlock, surrounded by soldiers and high-ranking council members. His 6 eyes never blinked. "Open it," he ordered. The door slid open slowly with a hiss. Steam escaped. From the fog, a single human stepped out. He wore a simple gray uniform with the Earth emblem on his chest. No guards, no weapons, no fear. His eyes met Veldrak's, calm and steady. "Ambassador Lee," he said. "Thank you for seeing me." Veldrak's voice was sharp. "Explain yourself, human. What did you mean by 'the war is over'?" Lee looked around at the crowd of alien faces, some full of hatred, others full of curiosity. "Exactly what I said," he answered. "The war has ended. And we made sure it won't start again." The council chamber erupted again. Words like impossible, blasphemy, dangerous filled the air. But Lee stood still, expressionless. "You think you understand war," he said quietly. "But you don't. You've been fighting for so long that you forgot why you started." Veldrak took a step forward. "Then tell us, human," he growled. "How did you end it?" Lee's eyes glowed faintly, as if reflecting distant stars. "You wouldn't believe me," he said. "But you will." Behind him, the lights on his ship began to pulse softly, blue and white, like a heartbeat. The guards raised their weapons, but Lee only smiled. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "This is how peace begins." The chamber fell silent once again. Every alien I turned toward the glowing ship. Veldrak's voice trembled for the first time in centuries. "What have they done?" he whispered. The answer was coming. But by the time the council understood it, the galaxy would never be the same. The council chamber was heavy with silence as Ambassador Lee stood before thousands of alien delegates. The strange blue glow from his ship still flickered through the large observation windows, casting eerie reflections on the walls of the grand hall. Archon Veldrak's 6 golden eyes fixed on the human. "You have one chance to explain," he said coldly. "How could your kind end a war that consumed half the galaxy?" Lee didn't flinch. His face stayed calm, his tone quiet but strong. "Because we saw what you didn't," he said. "We saw what war really is." His words hung in the air. Every alien in the room waited for him to continue. Lee took a slow step forward, his boots echoing softly on the marble floor. "For 600 years, the Terrans and Vulkars fought over territory, over resources, over pride," he said. "The Council sent diplomats, soldiers, even machines of peace. But you never tried to understand the pain behind the fight. You never tried to see through their eyes." Veldrak's voice grew colder. "And you claim humans did?" Lee nodded once. "Yes. We found a way to make them understand each other." The council chamber erupted again. Delegates shouted from every corner. "Lies!" yelled a scaled creature from the Zarn Empire. "Mind control!" hissed a winged alien from the Voth Dominion. Veldrak raised his hand, silencing them. "What method did you use?" he demanded. Lee looked up at the massive holographic ceiling showing the war-torn sectors of the galaxy. "We didn't use weapons," he said. "We used connection." His words confused many, angered others. Veldrak frowned. "Speak plainly, human." Lee hesitated for a moment, then sighed. 3 months ago, human scientists discovered something strange hidden in quantum space. A pattern, a frequency that links living minds. The crowd murmured nervously. "We called it the empathic signal," he continued. "It's a natural code in the universe. We didn't create it, we just learned how to speak through it." Veldrak's 6 eyes narrowed. "You're saying you sent a signal into the minds of entire species?" "Not into their minds," Lee corrected softly. "Into their hearts." For a moment, the room was silent again. Then he added, "When we transmitted it across the Tauron and Vulkar battle lines, something happened. They stopped." "Stopped," repeated Veldrak. "Fighting," Lee said simply. "They dropped their weapons. They looked at each other. And they cried." The word cried echoed strangely in the chamber. Many delegates didn't even understand it. Veldrak's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You made them feel?" Lee nodded. "Yes. For the first time in centuries, they felt each other's pain. Every life they ended, every city they destroyed, it all came back to them in a wave. They couldn't bear it. So they stopped. The council members exchanged nervous looks. Some seemed fascinated. Others looked horrified. "That's impossible," muttered a cold metallic voice from the corner. "Emotions cannot override instinct." Lee turned toward the voice. "Maybe not for machines," he said, "but for hearts, yes." Veldrak's expression turned dark. "You've tampered with the natural balance of life. You've played with the minds of entire civilizations." Lee met his gaze calmly. "We didn't control them," he said. "We just reminded them what it means to feel. We didn't force peace, they chose it." The Archon leaned closer. "Do you even understand what you've done, human? You interfered in galactic matters without permission. You've changed the course of evolution itself." Lee's reply was calm but cutting. "Evolution was already heading toward extinction," he said. "We simply changed its direction." The room fell into chaos again. Some delegates shouted for the humans' arrest, others demanded to study the technology. But in the middle of it all, Lee stood still. He looked at the massive screen showing the peaceful image of the Taron and Vulcar homeworlds, planets that had once been oceans of fire, now calm and quiet. "They're rebuilding," he said softly. "For the first time, they're speaking to each other without hate." A thin alien with crystal skin asked, "What happens when the signal fades?" Lee smiled faintly. "It won't. Once empathy is awakened, it doesn't die easily." Veldrak's claws gripped the edge of his podium. "What is the price, human? What did it cost to create such a thing?" Lee's voice grew quiet. "Too much. We lost many people during the tests. Some couldn't handle the pain they felt from others. Some didn't survive. But we kept going, because the galaxy needed to change." Veldrak stared at him for a long moment. His expression softened, but only slightly. "And what will you do with this power now?" he asked. Lee's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "We will protect it. We won't use it to rule. Only to heal." The Archon didn't look convinced. "You think peace can be created by force of emotion?" he asked. "No," Lee said. "Peace is not created. It's remembered." For the first time, some of the council members were silent, not out of fear, but out of thought. They were beginning to see that the humans had done something they couldn't even imagine. Still, the Archon's mind was full of doubt. He turned to his advisors and whispered, "No species should have such power." Lee seemed to hear him. "Maybe not," he said quietly. "But someone had to try." The chamber lights dimmed as the blue glow from Lee's ship faded behind him. The silence stretched on. Every being in the room could feel the weight of what had just been said. Veldrak finally spoke. "You've changed everything," he said. Lee gave a small nod. That was the point. As he walked out of the chamber, the air felt different, heavier, charged with fear and wonder. Behind him, the council members argued again, voices rising, decisions forming. But one thought echoed through every mind in that hall. If humans could end a 600-year war in hours, what else could they do? The next morning, the Galactic Council summoned an emergency meeting. The news of humanity's strange power had spread across every world under the Council's rule. Billions of beings were talking about the same thing. The humans had stopped a 600-year war without firing a single shot. In the Grand Chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Every species, from the insectoid Voth to the crystalline Earthy, watched the small human ambassador standing at the center of the room. Archon Veldrak sat high on his throne, his 6 golden eyes glowing faintly as he studied Lee. "You said you used something called the empathic signal," Veldrak began slowly. "But our scientists found traces of a strange energy pulse near the war zone. It wasn't just a signal, was it?" Lee looked up calmly. "No, it wasn't just a signal," he admitted. "It was a device. We call it Project Echo." The name echoed softly through the vast hall, carried by translators into 100 different languages. Veldrak leaned forward. Explain. Lee reached into a small metallic case beside him and lifted out a glowing blue sphere, no larger than a fruit. It pulsed with a soft light, like a beating heart. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some delegates stood from their seats, others stepped back in fear. This, Lee said, holding it up, is Project Echo. It doesn't destroy armies. It doesn't rewrite DNA. It doesn't control minds. It amplifies what already exists, the ability to feel. A murmur spread through the hall. How does it work? Someone demanded. Lee looked around the crowd. Every living mind sends signals, tiny energy waves linked to emotion. Joy, anger, sorrow, fear, all of them vibrate differently. We built Echo to amplify the frequency of empathy. When activated, it connects minds across species. It makes one being feel what another feels. Veldrak's voice was low, dangerous. So you forced them to feel each other's pain. Lee nodded slowly. Yes. When the Terrans fired their cannons, they felt the agony of the Vulkars who burned. When the Vulkars launched missiles, they felt the terror of Tauron children hiding underground. For the first time in centuries, they couldn't bear it. They dropped their weapons. They wept. And they stopped. Silence filled the hall. Even the usually arrogant Voth delegates said nothing. They were warriors, but even they could not imagine feeling every life they destroyed. Finally, Veldrak broke the silence. That's not peace, he said softly. That's surrender. Lee met his gaze. No, Archon. It's understanding. A flicker of something passed through Veldrak's expression. Doubt, maybe fear. And if you can make others feel what you want them to, he asked coldly, then you could control entire worlds. You could turn armies into slaves. Lee shook his head. That's not what we want. Humanity created Echo to stop the endless cycle of destruction. We don't want power. We want peace. That's what every empire says before it conquers the stars, Veldrak growled. Lee's calm never broke. Maybe, he said. But ask yourself this, if we wanted to conquer, wouldn't we have started already? You couldn't stop us now. The chamber stirred. The truth in his voice sent chills through many. The humans were young, yes, but unpredictable, fearless, and now armed with something more dangerous than any weapon. Veldrak stared at the glowing sphere. What happens if someone else uses it? Then they'll see themselves as monsters, Lee said quietly. That's the danger of Echo. It shows truth. Some can't survive it. A thin, blue-skinned delegate from the oral species raised her voice. You call this peace? You've unleashed madness. Minds are not meant to carry the suffering of billions. Lee looked at her with sympathy. You may be right. But if knowing pain can stop pain, isn't that worth it? The council fell silent again. For a long time, no one spoke. Every being in that room could feel the weight of his words. Veldrak finally stood. Humanity has crossed a line, he declared. You've touched forces no one should. Empathy is sacred. You turned it into a weapon. A weapon that saves lives, Lee replied. How many more centuries would you have waited? How many more children would die while you argued? Veldrak's expression darkened. You are dangerous. Lee's voice dropped to a whisper. So is ignorance. That answer angered many. Several delegates shouted for Lee's arrest, but Veldrak raised his hand. Enough. Let him speak. The Archon's eyes glowed faintly. Tell us, human, what do you plan to do with Echo now? Lee looked down at the device in his hand. Destroy it, he said. The crowd gasped. You would destroy your own creation? Veldrak asked in disbelief. Yes, Lee said quietly. It served its purpose. Humanity learned what we needed to. But we know the galaxy isn't ready for this. Not yet. Veldrax studied him for a long time. Then he said, "You claim wisdom, but I see fear. You fear your own power." Lee looked up slowly. "Power without fear is corruption." Veldrax's voice softened. "And yet, you came here to tell us. Why?" "Because we want your help," Lee answered. "We want the Council to guide the galaxy into a new kind of peace, one built on understanding, not conquest." For a brief second, the hall was quiet again. The blue sphere in Lee's hand dimmed, its light fading softly. Then the Archon gave a short, bitter laugh. "You think the Council can be taught to feel? You don't know us, human. We don't feel. We survive." Lee's reply was calm and final. "Then maybe survival isn't enough anymore." Veldrax's expression hardened once more. "Take your device and go," he said. "Leave the station. Leave Council space. If what you say is true, you've done your part. But if you're lying, we'll find out. And when we do, humanity will answer for it." Lee gave a small nod. "You already know the truth," he said softly. Then he turned and walked toward the exit, the faint blue light of Echo glowing in his hand. Behind him, the Council erupted into argument again. Some demanded to learn from the humans. Others called for war. But one thought echoed in every mind: if a small world like Earth could end a centuries-old war in hours, what would they do next? The Galactic Council was no longer the same after the meeting with the human ambassador. The air inside the massive space station felt different, thick with unease and suspicion. Every corner whispered the same question: had humanity saved the galaxy, or had they just unleashed something far more dangerous? 4 days, the council chamber remained in constant session. Delegates argued endlessly, shouting over one another, their voices echoing off the metallic walls. Some called for an alliance with Earth, others demanded its isolation. Archon Veldrax sat silently on his high throne, his 6 golden eyes reflecting the chaos below. He had seen wars begin with less noise. But this time, he sensed something far worse than war: fear. The Council's oldest members, those who had lived through hundreds of planetary cycles, feared that the humans had changed the rules of existence itself. "They claim it was peace," hissed the reptilian delegate from the core dominion. "But it is mind control. A weapon that enslaves emotion." A crystalline being from the earthy responded coldly, "And yet it worked. The Terrans and Vulkars have not fired a single shot since." "Isn't that what we all wanted?" "At what cost?" another shouted. "If the humans can make entire civilizations surrender their will, what's to stop them from using it on us?" The chamber erupted again. Veldrax finally stood, and his deep voice thundered through the hall. "Enough." The delegates froze. "We are the Council," he said. "We exist to protect balance, not to panic over one species' discovery. But make no mistake, Project Echo is a threat, whether by intention or by its mere existence." He paused, letting his words sink in. "If humanity truly destroyed their device, then they are wise. If not," his eyes glowed fiercely, "then we must be ready." Behind the public debates, secret meetings began. Representatives from the largest powers, the Core, the Voth, the Earthy, and the Net-Hari, met in dark corridors, away from the official records. They called themselves the Circle of Preservation. Their purpose was clear: find the truth about Project Echo and, if necessary, destroy it before humans could use it again. Rumors spread quickly. Some said Earth was already building a stronger version, something they called the Echo Nexus. Others believed humanity had hidden the original device somewhere deep in uncharted space. The uncertainty was enough to spark panic. Veldrax tried to hold the council together, but the cracks were spreading. Even among his own advisors, trust was dying. One night, he stood alone in the viewing chamber, staring at the faint glow of distant stars. His mind replayed the image of the human ambassador. The calm eyes, the quiet confidence, the way he had spoken as if he already knew how the council would react. Veldrax's instincts screamed that the humans were not finished. That thought both fascinated and terrified him. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ambassador Lee returned home. His ship descended through clouds of silver and blue light, landing at the United Nations Space Assembly Dome. The world had changed since he left. Humans were united under one banner now. No nations, no wars, only one Earth. But unity had come with a heavy shadow. The rest of the galaxy feared them. Inside a hidden chamber beneath the assembly, Lee met with the Earth High Council. Holograms of the planet's leaders appeared around him. "You did well," said the Chancellor, a calm woman with sharp gray eyes. "The Council suspects the truth, but they don't know everything." Lee placed the small metal case containing the Echo Sphere on the table. "They shouldn't," he said. "If they ever find out what we're building, they'll attack before we're ready." "And the Council's reaction?" the Chancellor asked. "Divided," Lee replied. "Some want peace with us. Others want to destroy us. But the Archon, he's different. He's watching us carefully." The Chancellor nodded slowly. "Then let him watch. We have nothing to hide, yet." She looked down at the glowing case. Project Echo was just the beginning. The next phase must continue. Lee hesitated. "You mean Nexus?" "Yes," she said firmly. "Echo showed us how to connect minds. Nexus will show us how to unify them. No more wars. No more lies. A single consciousness guiding the galaxy toward peace." Lee's voice dropped. "Peace or control?" The Chancellor looked at him with cold eyes. "Does it matter if it works?" Back on the Galactic Council Station, the Circle of Preservation prepared their move. A fleet of stealth ships was authorized to infiltrate human territory. Officially, it was a survey mission. In truth, it was a strike. Veldrak didn't approve the attack directly, but he didn't stop it either. He told himself it was for the balance of the galaxy. Yet deep down, he wondered if balance had already been lost the moment humanity touched the Echo. Days later, a coded message reached the Council Station. The Circle's fleet had vanished near the edge of Sol space. No distress signals, no debris, nothing. It was as if they had never existed. The Council panicked. "The humans destroyed them," shouted one delegate. "They're declaring war." Veldrak said nothing. But in his private quarters, he received a transmission from an unknown source. The screen flickered, and the face of Ambassador Lee appeared. "Archon Veldrak," Lee said softly. "We know about your fleet. Don't send another." Veldrak's claws tightened on his chair. "You dare threaten the Council?" Lee shook his head. "Not a threat. A warning. The galaxy is changing, whether you want it or not. The age of endless war is over. Humanity will make sure of it. By force." Veldrak growled. "By truth," Lee replied. "You fear us because we ended what you couldn't. But you'll soon realize, we didn't just end a war. We changed how war begins." The transmission ended before Veldrak could respond. For a long time, he sat in silence, staring at the dark screen. Around him, the stars looked colder than ever. The Council had wanted peace. Now they feared it. Humanity had brought peace, but peace with a price no one yet understood. And somewhere, deep in the heart of Earth, the next stage of Project Echo was already beginning to pulse with life. The declaration came quietly but struck like thunder across the galaxy. The Galactic Council officially exiled Earth. All trade routes were closed, all diplomatic channels severed, and every human ship was ordered to leave Council-controlled space. The message was short and cold: for tampering with the balance of the galaxy and creating unauthorized mind technology, humanity is no longer recognized as a member of the interstellar community. When the transmission reached Earth, the world did not panic. There were no riots, no fear, only silence, and then, unity. The people of Earth had expected this. They knew the galaxy would never accept what they had done. Yet, instead of despair, something else began to grow: resolve. In the great dome of the United Earth Assembly, Leaders from every continent stood beneath the shimmering holographic image of their blue planet. The Chancellor's voice filled the chamber. "They fear us because they don't understand us," she said. "They call us dangerous because we ended their war without firing a weapon. But we are not dangerous. We are awake." The delegates nodded. Ambassador Lee stood beside her, the small case containing the original Echo device resting on the table. Its faint blue light flickered like a heartbeat. "The Council will not stop," Lee warned. "They will spy on us, block our colonies, maybe even attack. They won't believe we destroyed the device." The Chancellor smiled faintly. "That's because we didn't," she said. Lee frowned. "You mean?" "Project Echo was a test," she interrupted. "You know that. What they saw was only a fraction of what we built. The real work was hidden, deep beneath the lunar research vaults." Lee stared at her, realization dawning. "Echo Nexus," he whispered. "It's real." The Chancellor nodded. "It's ready." She turned to the gathered assembly. "Echo showed us empathy. Nexus will show us unity. The Council wants to control peace through fear. We will create peace through connection." Lee hesitated. "If we activate it, it will reach every human mind. We don't even know what that will do." "We will find out together," she said. "We can't go back to who we were. The universe has changed us, and we must lead it into what comes next." As the meeting ended, the leaders placed their hands on the table's light ring. A single command was transmitted through the hidden network: authorization for Project Echo Nexus. Across the solar system, machines awakened. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, satellites and colonies, the system began to hum. A soft wave of invisible energy spread, touching the minds of every human being. But it was not control, it was connection. For the first time, humanity thought as one. Thoughts blended, emotions shared, fears and hopes unified into a single pulse of understanding. On Mars, miners stopped working mid-swing, feeling each other's hearts. On Luna, scientists looked up from their stations, tears in their eyes. On Earth, billions paused at once and felt the same calm clarity, a feeling that they were no longer alone inside their minds. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the Council was in chaos. Reports arrived from every corner of known space. Human activity had changed. Their ships moved in perfect harmony, their colonies functioned without conflict, and their technology had begun to evolve at impossible speeds. "They've formed a hive mind," shouted a Voth commander. "It's the beginning of domination." Veldrak listened quietly, his 6 golden eyes reflecting the holographic reports. He knew what this meant. The humans had achieved something the galaxy's greatest empires had failed to do for millennia: complete unity. But unity was power, and power terrified those who didn't possess it. Secretly, the Circle of Preservation reactivated. They designed a covert operation called Silent Dawn. The plan was simple: send elite strike teams to infiltrate human space and destroy the Nexus source before it could expand beyond Earth. Veldrak, though uneasy, approved the mission. He told himself it was necessary for the galaxy's survival. Days later, the strike teams entered human territory. But what they found was not what they expected. Earth was quiet, peaceful, glowing faintly from orbit with a strange bluish hue. As they descended into the atmosphere, their sensors failed, their communications went silent. Then, without warning, their minds filled with voices, not words, but emotions. Calmness, sorrow, curiosity. A single voice spoke within them, gentle and unmistakable. "You don't have to fight anymore." The soldiers tried to resist, but their hands shook, their weapons dropped. Some cried. Some laughed. The fear vanished. They saw Earth not as an enemy, but as home. When they returned, those who could, they brought no data, no weapons, only one message: they are not what we thought. Back on the Council station, Veldrak watched the reports in disbelief. The strike teams had failed, yet no one had died. "What are they doing?" he muttered. The Council was terrified. "They're spreading it," said one delegate. The connection. Soon, it will reach us all. Veldrak turned toward the observation window, watching the stars. Maybe that's what they want, he whispered. On Earth, Lee stood on a balcony overlooking a glowing city where millions of lights pulsed in rhythm with Echo Nexus. He could feel every person, not their words, but their presence, their emotions. Humanity was no longer divided by borders or fear. He spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. We were exiled to save them from us. But maybe now, we'll save them from themselves. Behind him, the Chancellor approached. Are you ready for the next phase? She asked. Lee turned, his expression calm but resolute. If the galaxy fears what it doesn't understand, he said, then we'll help it understand. She nodded. And if they fight? Lee looked up at the stars. Then we'll make them feel why they shouldn't. Far above, the faint blue aura of Earth expanded like a heartbeat across the void, reaching further every second. The Council could exile humanity from their laws, but not from the future. The age of isolation was over. The age of connection had begun. The galaxy had entered a new and uneasy silence. After Earth's exile, the stars seemed quieter, as if waiting for something unseen to move. Across the Galactic Council worlds, whispers of fear spread faster than light. Every transmission, every ship, every faint signal from the Sol system was studied in secret. The Council called it the Silent War, a conflict fought without weapons, without armies, and without a single declaration. But it was war all the same. Archon Veldrak stood in the command chamber of the Council's flagship, his 6 golden eyes fixed on the holographic map of known space. Blue zones marked human influence. Every month, they spread wider. How are they doing this? He demanded. The Council's intelligence chief, a shadowy being made of liquid light, bowed slightly. We don't know, Archon. Their ships move in perfect coordination, as if every pilot shares one mind. They react before we even detect them. It's as if they know our plans before we make them. Veldrak's claws tightened around the railing. Echo Nexus, he growled. They've weaponized it. The chief hesitated. Perhaps not as a weapon, but as something greater. Reports suggest human fleets don't communicate through technology anymore. They think together. Veldrak turned sharply. That's not evolution. That's domination. Meanwhile, in the hidden depths of Earth, Ambassador Lee stood before the pulsing heart of Echo Nexus. It floated within a vast underground chamber, a sphere of pure blue energy, alive and breathing like an enormous organism. Around it, scientists worked silently. No orders, no arguments, only shared thought. Lee could feel them in his mind, their ideas flowing like waves. It was strange at first, to think and feel alongside millions. But now, it felt natural. The connection was not control. It was harmony. The Chancellor appeared beside him. The Council is afraid, she said softly. They see unity as a weapon. Lee nodded. To those who live in chaos, peace always looks like control. They've begun their attacks, she continued. Small infiltrations, sabotage attempts. We've neutralized them before they reached the outer colonies. Lee looked at the glowing sphere. They'll keep trying until they understand. The question is, how do we show them without destroying them? In orbit above Mars, a Council stealth ship drifted close to a human outpost. Inside, the crew prepared to deploy an energy disruptor designed to interfere with psychic frequencies. But before they could activate it, the lights flickered. A soft hum filled the air. Then they heard it, not through speakers, but inside their minds, a calm voice, the same voice that had haunted them since their first encounter with Earth. You don't need to do this. The commander froze. Who's there? The voice continued gently. You are afraid. You think we'll take your freedom. But freedom means nothing if it only creates suffering. The crew tried to resist. Their instruments failed, systems shutting down one by one. In the silence, they began to feel emotions not their own. Kindness, sorrow, understanding. One soldier dropped his weapon and whispered, "I can feel my enemy crying." Within minutes, the entire crew surrendered without a single shot fired. Their ship was guided safely back to Council space. When questioned, the commander could only say, "They didn't fight us. They forgave us." The report spread like wildfire through the galaxy. Some called it mercy. Others called it psychological warfare. The council grew more divided. "They are infecting our minds," cried one delegate. "Soon, we'll all be part of their network." But others saw something else, an end to hate itself. Veldrak struggled to keep control. His once great council was crumbling under fear and confusion. He summoned his closest advisors. "If this continues, our civilization will dissolve," he said. "We need to stop them before their influence reaches us." One of his generals leaned forward. "Then we must attack Earth directly." The Archon hesitated. Even he knew what that meant. A full-scale war against humanity might end the galaxy itself. "If we attack," he said quietly, "and they respond with Echo Nexus, we'll lose more than the war. We'll lose who we are." Still, desperation won. The fleet was prepared, thousands of ships gathering on the edge of human space. The greatest armada in galactic history. But as they readied their weapons, something strange began to happen. The ship's communication systems flickered. Pilots started hearing voices, soft, distant, familiar. "Please don't," the voices said. "You know this isn't the way." One by one, crew members hesitated. Some refused to fight. Others turned their ships around. Entire squadrons went silent. Veldrak stood on the bridge, furious. "Stay in formation," he roared. But no one responded. Instead, the stars around them began to glow faintly blue. A vast field of energy spread across the void. The Echo Nexus had awakened. It didn't attack. It simply connected. Across light years, soldiers, officers, and civilians alike began to feel each other. Their fears, their hopes, their dreams. The barriers between species faded like mist. The war collapsed before it began. Veldrak fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the flood of emotion. He could feel the pain of his ancestors, the sorrow of his enemies, the love of those he'd never known. For the first time in his long life, he understood. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy, they had healed it. In the silence that followed, a single transmission echoed across every world, every ship, every being. It was Ambassador Lee's voice. "We didn't come to rule," he said. "We came to remind you what you forgot, to feel." As the stars shimmered with the light of connection, the silent war ended, not with destruction, but with awakening. And somewhere deep within the vast blue glow, humanity's heartbeat pulsed through the galaxy, steady and eternal. The galaxy was no longer the same. Where once there had been cold silence and endless conflict, now there was a strange calm. Across thousands of worlds, the light of Echo Nexus shimmered like a soft mist, invisible but deeply felt. People who had never met could now sense each other's hearts. Empires that had been enemies for centuries suddenly hesitated to fight, because now, to harm another meant to feel that pain yourself. The Galactic Council, once the most powerful force in the stars, was paralyzed, not by war, but by understanding. Archon Veldrak sat alone in the council chamber, staring at the great window that looked out over the twin suns of Helios Prime. His empire's banners hung silent behind him, their colors dimmed. Around him, the seats of the council were empty. Delegates who once shouted for conquest now sat quietly in their home worlds, unable to justify the endless wars they once glorified. Veldrak could feel them all in his mind, their confusion, their fear, their awakening. He had resisted the Nexus for as long as he could, but resistance now felt meaningless. For the first time, he understood what the humans had done. They hadn't built a weapon. They had built a mirror, one that showed every species what they truly were. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ambassador Lee stood on the balcony of the Unity Tower. The night sky was alive with shimmering blue auroras that rippled across the planet. It was the visible pulse of the Nexus, breathing like a living being. Below him, millions of humans moved in perfect rhythm, not slaves, not soldiers, but a single people bound by empathy. The Chancellor joined him, her expression calm but thoughtful. "It's done," she said. "The Council fleets have withdrawn. No more battles, no more attacks." Lee nodded slowly. "It's strange," he said. "For centuries, we dreamed of peace. Now that it's here, it feels quiet." She smiled faintly. "Maybe peace always feels quiet to those who have lived in noise." Lee turned to her. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" "For what?" she asked. "For showing them the truth?" He sighed. "We didn't give them a choice. We connected them whether they wanted it or not." The Chancellor's eyes softened. "No. We only opened the door. They chose to walk through." Beyond Earth, the Nexus expanded, no longer limited to human minds. The connection had begun to touch alien worlds, slowly, gently, seeking only those who were ready. On the ocean planet of Narrated, entire schools of telepathic lifeforms began to hum in unison with the Earth's frequency. On the icy moons of Vorga, miners who once fought over resources now shared warmth and supplies without being asked. Across countless systems, the change was spreading, not by force, but by feeling. Yet not everyone embraced it. In the dark corners of the galaxy, old powers gathered, those who feared the loss of control. Former warlords, corporate kings, and shadow governments called themselves the Severed. They believed the Nexus was a trap, a silent invasion of the mind. They built ships that blocked the signal, forming hidden colonies cut off from the network. To them, isolation meant freedom. To the rest of the galaxy, it was madness. News of these severed colonies reached Earth. In the assembly chamber, Lee stood before the leaders of the Nexus Council, the new form of governance that united humans and willing alien allies. "They're afraid," he said. "And fear can spread faster than peace. If we ignore them, they'll become a threat." The Chancellor looked thoughtful. "Then what do you suggest?" Lee hesitated. "We reach out. Not with soldiers, not with ships. With empathy. We let them feel who we are." The Council agreed. A group of volunteers was chosen, humans and aliens who had learned to channel the Nexus in its purest form. They called them the Sentinels of Harmony. Their mission was to travel to the severed worlds and share the truth, not through words or weapons, but through connection. The first mission was to the world of Koresh, a harsh desert planet ruled by a warlord named Draxthar. When the Sentinels arrived, they were met with fire. Anti-Nexus weapons filled the sky, blocking signals, creating static in the collective network. But the Sentinels did not fight. They walked into the flames, unarmed. Draxthar watched from his fortress, confused. "Why aren't they defending themselves?" he demanded. His advisor answered, "Because they don't need to." When the Sentinels reached the gates, one of them, a young woman named Arya, looked up at the warlord and simply said, "You're afraid of losing control, but control is what's been killing you." Her voice carried through the air, not just in sound, but in thought. For a brief second, Draxthar saw her memories, Earth before unity, wars, chaos, loss, and then the peace that followed. He felt her grief and her hope. He fell to his knees, shaking. "What have you done to me?" he whispered. "We've shown you yourself," Arya said softly. By the time the mission ended, Koresh had joined the Nexus. One by one, other severed colonies began to reconnect. Not through pressure, but through understanding. Back on Earth, Lee received the final report. "It's spreading faster than we imagined," a technician said. "Even the ones who resisted are starting to listen." Lee nodded slowly, watching the stars. "It was never about making them like us," he said. "It was about helping them feel what we finally learned, to be one." The Chancellor joined him. "And what happens when there's no one left to unite?" she asked. Lee smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time we look beyond our galaxy." She raised an eyebrow. "You think there's more out there?" "There always is," he said. "And maybe, somewhere far away, Another civilization is waiting for someone to remind them what it means to feel. The night sky pulsed again, the blue light growing stronger, stretching toward the stars like a heartbeat echoing through infinity. Humanity had once been feared for ending wars. Now, they were remembered for ending division itself. The galaxy slept in peace, but the story of Echo Nexus had only just begun.